Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests. I assume you can see the screen? You
Yes.
can see my presentation. Well, very good. Many of you may think that the downfall or the overturning of Roe versus Wade was a cataclysmic event, which it was. You might think that it came upon us all of a sudden and we didn't expect it, which it was. For many people it was. But if you were paying attention over the last 50 years, you saw it happening. Now, I'm not going to go into the pluses and minuses and why this was a flawed decision. I won't go into all the thoughts about it, but I do want to share how we got here through 3 significant court cases over the last 12 years that really led to the downfall of Roe versus Wade. My thesis here is that drip by drip, the Supreme Court has eroded the average person's civil rights. I'm talking about me and you. I'm not talking about big business. I'm not talking about wealthy people, because they've shifted political influence to wealthy individuals and corporations. And this has happened progressively over the last at least 12 years, if not longer. And 3 cases significantly show that. First of all, what is the responsibility of the Supreme Court? You see the justices here. The court's main job is to decide whether laws and government actions are constitutional or allowed by the Constitution. Now, there are many interpretations of the Constitution. Some people want to go back to 1776 or 1789 when it was initiated. Some people want to interpret it in a more modern sense based on the changes. The Supreme Court interprets the Constitution, that is, the power to say whether any law or government action goes against it. Decisions made by the Supreme Court, and this is the real kicker, they are final and can only be undone either by changing the Constitution, and that is a significant process that requires 3/4 of the states to ratify any change, or by later decision of the Supreme Court, which is what happened during the recent overturn of Roe versus Wade. Now, the timeline starts in 2010, and the timeline starts with a case that was significant. Citizens United is the name of the case. Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission. Now, in January of 2010, the Supreme Court reversed century-old campaign finance rules. Now, you may think there are a lot of rules around finances. However, this decision allowed corporations and other outside groups to spend an unlimited money on elections. Now, how could they do this? They couldn't give unlimited money to candidates, but they could develop political action committees, or PACs. PACs do not have to disclose donors. PACs can take an unlimited amount of money from a donor. They can spend it any way they want, as long as they do not do it in coordination with a candidate. What's the result of Citizens United? Well, wealthy donors have gained an unproportional influence on candidates. If you've heard the term dark money in campaigns, dark money is initiated by Citizens United. And what's even worse, because there's no disclosure of donors to political action committees, foreign governments, foreign instigators can donate to them, which is completely and totally illegal. However, they can do it without being recognized. So number 1 case, drip, Citizens United. Number 2 case, Shelby County versus Holder. 2013, Shelby County versus Holder. Holder was the Attorney General of the United States at the time. But in June of 2013, the Supreme Court stripped the pre-clearance requirement from the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Now, the Voting Rights Act was considered one of the most, if not the most successful act to enlarge and increase voting in this country. Pre-clearance was the fact that any state, before changing their election rules, certain states who had shown to be discriminatory and limited voting rights had to pre-clear any changes. And however, in 2013, the Supreme Court determined that it wasn't needed anymore. At the time, we had a Black president, and they said, oh, we don't need it. There is no more discrimination. Well, the result of Shelby County versus Holder was really more than insidious. It was monumental. The result was to increase voting restrictions. And what we've seen is purging voters from lists, gerrymandering districts, requiring strict photo IDs. When I say strict, very strict photo IDs over and above your typical and other form of voting restrictions. Now, this was really disruptive because now it allowed a disproportional influence of those in power to restrict those they didn't want to vote. Next strip, Hobby Lobby. Now, if you buy from Hobby Lobby, I'm not going to tell you to stop, except I'm not buying from Hobby Lobby. And why is that? Hobby Lobby is a crafts and hobby store. However, in June of 2014, Hobby Lobby sued the government because they did not want to pay for contraceptive rights for their employees, which was required by the Affordable Care Act, the ACA. Certain corporations cannot be required, and this is the decision that the Supreme Court added religious rights to corporations, not to individuals. To certain corporations, they could not be required to provide contraceptive coverage under the Affordable Care Act. Now, this was significant because the result was the cost these corporations can avoid was shifted and passed on to others. The saying about this was, in addition to having the right to free speech, and that was Citizens United, corporations could have free speech, absent a mouth to speak, many corporations now have religious rights, absent a soul. Even though they had no mouth, they could speak. Even though they had no soul, they had religious rights. I think the significant one is what you can see in this picture. This is not a church. A craft store is not a church, and the Bible is not a healthcare plan. Well, where does that lead us? Well, that leads us to where we are today. After loading the court with 3 Supreme Court justices over the last few years, 2 of which you could say were stolen from the president in power or the president to be, the Supreme Court voted to overturn Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade was the right to have an abortion federally across the country. Now, abortion is not federally protected, and the right to abortion was left to the states. So depending upon what state you live in, you have a different quality of medical care, reproductive care, than you do maybe right to the state next door. Many states had trigger laws that went into effect banning abortion immediately when Roe versus Wade was overturned. So what's the effect on us, the average person, or even low-income people? Because people of wealth are going to get their abortions. People of wealth can go to other states. People of wealth can get the health care they want. The results are a reduced workforce. If you are forced to carry a pregnancy to term, maybe you can't go into the workforce. You have to stay home for childcare. There are greater medical risks as a result of this. Mothers-to-be lives are endangered based on where they live. Now, it goes so far as to say that in some cases, an ectopic pregnancy, which is a significant danger to the mother-to-be, is against the law. And that is really tragic. There's a decreased earning potential. If you know anything about salary studies, women are generally paid less than men. There are a number of reasons. But one of the reasons is they often take time out of the workforce to have children, which delays their career. Regardless of the gender inequalities, the delay of the career can limit a woman's right to earn. Child's well-being are affected by this, because if you're a child, you're raised in poverty, you're not going to do as well as somebody who's raised with a significant, with wealth, or with even a middle-class income. Those are the things that led to Roe versus Wade, and that was the cataclysmic event. But what's next? Well, what's next could be, if you have been following the news, the majority opinion was piled onto by Clarence Thomas, Justice Thomas. And I won't give you my opinion of Justice Thomas and his opinion of, and his view of the Constitution. However, he said, now that Roe versus Wade has been overturned, we need to look at other things, such as same-sex marriage, consenting adults, sexual practices of consensual adults in their own bedroom. We need to look at contraception. He did not mention interracial marriage significantly, but that was also a decision that was decided by the Supreme Court, that interracial marriage was allowed, was not prohibited. And maybe the reason he didn't say that is because he has an interracial marriage. At any rate, over the last 12 years, drip by drip, the Supreme Court has taken away and eroded, turned back the clock to taking away our civil rights. Now, what can you do about it? Well, number one, you have to vote. You should vote for candidates who say they will reform the Supreme Court. There are a number of things that can be done. You can enlarge the Supreme Court. You can put term limits on the Supreme Court. You can add ethics to the Supreme Court. They is the only court in the whole country that has no ethics standards. And we all must do something, because we can't continue to have our rights eroded. Madam Toastmaster,